Okay, so let's implement the clustering now. So in this session, I will demonstrate on setting up the indexer clustering. So for that, I have already spinned 4 instances in AWS Cloud, and I've already installed Splunk in all those 4 instances. So if you see here, one instance, I'm going to make it act as a cluster master, and the 2 instances as the peer nodes, and the last one as the Splunk search. So these are newly provisioned instances, and I have just installed the Splunk in all these 4. Apart from installing Splunk, I did not make any other changes, like any other config changes as of now. So, and why I spinned up instances and installed Splunk already, just to save the time, right? So if you need any assistance on installing the Splunk, you can visit my channel and you can see the relevant videos related to installation of Splunk on both Windows and Linux. Okay, so uh, keeping that aside, so for now, these are the 4 instances, and Splunk is already installed, it's up and running. And then obviously, like when you are spinning up the instances, you just need to make sure of adding the right security group uh, to make sure that the connections are getting established between all those instances on the required ports, right? So, like for the clustering instances, will have to communicate with each other on the management port, like 8089, and like whatever replication port you choose to use. So that port also you need to enable on the security group, just to avoid any network related issues. Okay, so as of now, I haven't decided like which is, the all these are full Splunk installation instances, Splunk Enterprise. So as of now, you can't really differentiate which one is the cluster master, which one is the search peer, and which one is the search head, right? So we will have, by making the config changes, we will act them accordingly. So this instance, I'm going to make it the cluster master. And if you haven't watched my previous video where I've explained the clustering in detail, I would request you to go back and watch that video once, watch that complete session. I tried to explain the clustering, how it works in Splunk in detail. So you'll have the better idea before doing the lab. Okay, so having said that, let's move to the next part now. And if you remember, I have explained 3 ways there. So you can configure clustering in 3 different ways. You can do it using web UI, or you can directly modify the server.conf, or there is a third way of executing the commands through the CLI, right? So I'll show you all 3 ways, because we need to configure 3 different kind of nodes, master node, and then the search peers, and then the search head. So this instance, I'm going to act as a cluster master. So here we will take the help of Splunk Web UI to configure it as a master. So what you need to do, you need to click on settings, go to indexer clustering. If you see, as of now, indexer clustering, it's not enabled, right? And it's giving an option to enable it from the web UI. So once you click on it, you see these 3 options, and this is what we discussed in our previous session, right? So in clustering, there are 3 kind of nodes: manager node, peer node, and then the search head node, right? So we'll proceed with the manager node on this instance, and then you need to decide the replication factor, search factor. So all these terminologies I have explained in my previous session. So replication factor, and I'm proceeding with the minimum hardware requirements. So like I am using just 2 indexers, 2 search peers. So we'll make the replication factor 2, search factor same as replication factor. Just one important thing to note here: even if you do not define search factor here, it will consider the replication factor number as the default search factor. So just keep that in mind. So I'm defining it explicitly here. My replication factor is going to be 2, search factor 2. Security key, anything you can define. So I'm putting a Splunk. And this is optional, but in production environment, it's recommended to use it, right? So this label is going to be your index cluster label, and this helps you a lot when you move on to the monitoring console for monitoring of your cluster environment. And I'll explain how to use the monitoring console, how to configure it in my upcoming sessions. So I'm making the label as cluster 1 and will enable it. So we need to restart after making the config changes. So let's do that. So while it starts, these two instances, I'm going to make them act as the indexers, search peers, right? So for that, search peers, let's try to configure using backend by editing the server.conf. So if you remember what we need to do, we need to edit the server.conf. And for this demonstration, I'm using the system local, but you can use any other custom apps as well in your production environment, or like while testing as well. If you want to try out that, you can do that. So we'll go to local. Here we will have server.conf, and here I will put the clustering extension. So for server.com, you need to put this replication port, and just make sure this port is already uh, added in your security group to allow the communication between the peer nodes. Okay, so now copy this extension, go there, put it here, and here if you see this manager URI IP, right? So this is the IP of our manager node. If you hover your cursor here, you can see it, right? So here you need to put your manager URI and then the management port, which is 8089. Save it and then restart. Before restarting, let me show you one thing here. So if you go to any of these three instances as of now, if you see the indexer clustering, it's not enabled on any of the instances, right? So our master node is ready now. So before moving to the search pairs, let me show you one thing here. Okay, so if you see here, and you'll see the message as well, waiting for requisite number of peers to join the cluster, right? So now your clustering is enabled. You have enabled it, you have already designated the master node, but the message you can see, right? The peer nodes are yet to join. So now configure the peer nodes. So here we have already edited server.conf. Let's restart Splunk, and we'll do it in a detail step by step. So I'll try to cover up even these small things. So just bear with me. I'll request you to watch the video in detail to understand all the basic concepts of setting up, like implementing indexer clustering. Uh, so it may take few extra minutes, but my motto is to make the concept clear for you so that you are able to implement it on your own without any guidance from anyone, right? So that's the reason I'm trying to explain it in detail. Okay, so now on this peer node, we have directly edited server.conf and restarted Splunk. So as soon as this Splunk restart completes on this peer node 1, and when we will go back on the UI, okay, I think it should be up soon. Just wait for a few extra seconds. Okay, so now this peer node 1 is restarted. So now if you go And if you refresh your cluster master, you can see under peers, you can see one node has joined now, right? And now if you go here on your peer 1, you can see this message. The cluster peer is unable to request at this time. I mean, so this, what it basically does, the number of required peers haven't joined the cluster as of now. That's why you're not able to see cluster status here. So now let's configure the other instance. And this one also we will do directly editing the server.conf file. So put this, and like as I explained, you need to make sure you are putting the right manager IP here, the management port, and this is the security key that I have used while configuring the manager node, right? So you need to make sure that you are passing the right password here, right security key. So it's done. Let's restart this node as well. So it joins the cluster. So as soon as this node gets restarted, you will be able to see two nodes here on the manager node, and even this error message will go away. So all these messages, uh, one, like here you can see one or more replicated indexes might need to be fully searchable. So these errors are coming because the required number of peers haven't joined the instance. But now if you see, both peers have joined the master node. Both peer nodes are part of the clustering now. So if you go here and refresh, this message should no longer populate, right? So now it's gone. So this configuration is done, and if you log into peer second, this will also go. So your clustering setup is done. You can see everything is matching. Search factor is met, replication factor is met. And if you see the indexes, it will start populating the like a Splunk's internal indexes, audit internal. And if you see the copies, so it had, like we implemented two peer nodes, right? We kept the replication factor as 2. So you can see it's keeping 2 replicated copies, 2 searchable copies. Search factor also we kept 2. This part is done. Your clustering implementation is done. Now I'll try to explain further more on the clustering part. Uh, okay, so before moving to that, if you go to any of your peer nodes, right, and if you search for the internal index, so you can see, right, it's reporting the data from two nodes, right? That's what I wanted to explain. So its own logs, and one from the other peer node, which is part of the clustering. So this is already replicated. But now let's try to create a custom index. So I will create an index here. This is my peer node 1. I'm creating a test index here. This is my peer node 2. I'm creating a same index here as well. Because for the clustering to work, you just need to make sure that the configs are identical across all your peer nodes, right? Otherwise, the clustering will fail. It won't work. It won't replicate the data. So now you have the test index on both of your peer nodes. But now, if you go here and refresh, right, you won't see that test index here as of now. So what we will do, and I'm again, like I'm just reiterating it, I'm trying to explain it bit in detail to make it very clear. So now what we will do, so as of now, this index doesn't contain any data, right? Any buckets. So what we will do, we'll try to put some custom data using make results. Sorry, my bad. And we'll put subject one field, some one field, and let's collect it to test index. So now this index has some data, right? It has one event. Let's try to put one more. I'm just making bit changes there. So now it has two events. But this event you have generated on this peer node, right? 112. So here it would have generated the primary bucket. This is the primary source of this index test. And if you go to your another peer node, you won't see this data as of now. And I'll explain you like how you can start getting the data replicated to your other peer nodes. So it's not here, right? So go to cluster master, try to refresh, see if you can see that index. No, look, it's still not populating here. The reason is if you go to backend, go to your peer nodes, and since we have created the index using the search app, it will be inside OPT Splunk app, search app, and inside local you'll find that. So the reason is because by default the wrap factor is set to 0, and that is the reason the data is not being replicated to the other peer nodes. It stays only to the primary indexer. Primary indexer will have the primary buckets like where the data was initially ingested. So there you will have the primary bucket. Now what we will do will, and this is very important for the index to be to get it replicated to your other peer nodes. So you need to set ref factor equals to auto and restart. And you need to, as I said, the config should be identical across all your peer nodes. So you need to do it on the other peer node as well. So here as well, we will add ref factor equals to auto restart. But this will still not replicate the data. So I'll show you that as well. So this peer node 1 is restarted. Let the peer node 2 as well restart, and then we'll go back to cluster master, see whether the data has started replicating or not. Okay, so this is done. Let's go back to the master node. And as soon as you added ref factor equals to auto, you can see that index has started populating here, right? And you can see that it's maintaining 2 copies. But the important point is it's showing 0 buckets, right? Because the reason is, and I mean, if you need more details about the topic, I'd suggest uh, uh, like going through the Splunk official docs. So you'll get to know that like the existing buckets, when you implement the indexer clustering, just keep in mind the existing buckets. Buckets like the directories where your Splunk data is stored. So that data will not be replicated. The data which was generated, ingested before implementing the indexer clustering, those buckets will not be replicated. So just keep that in mind. Now to show you the new data. So let's log into your peer nodes. So still you don't see any data. So let's try to create a new event now, and that should be replicated. Again, collect it in test index only. Okay. So this is done. So here you see three events. This is the latest one we post, and this new event we should be able to see it in our other peer node. So just allow it few seconds. Go back to cluster master, and here now you will start seeing one bucket. So as of now it's showing 0 because after implementing the clustering, no new data was stored to that test index. But now we have created one sample event, so it would have created. Okay, so soon you will see the buckets one for test index, and that will show you that the data is replicating now to the peer nodes. Okay, fine. So now you can see the bucket got changed from 0 to 1. And if you go to your other node now, you will see one event here. Just rephrase it. You should be able to see the data very soon. Fine. So now you can see that bucket got replicated. You can see one bucket here, and it has two copies now on both peer nodes. One copy, one copy. But here you can see three events because two events we generated before implementing the clustering or before making those ref factor changes. And one event we generated after making all correct config changes. Here you are able to see three events, but the event what we generated now, we are able to see that it got replicated. Now let's try to implement the add the search head. So these are peer nodes, and in production environment we disable the web for peer nodes. We do not really need the web for peer nodes, right? But just for this demo, I'm showing you here. Otherwise, you just need the search head to communicate with your peer nodes. So here on this to set up the search head, what we will do, we will use the CLI. So this instance, I'm going to make it act as a search head. So what you need to do, you need to use edit config CLI query command. Sorry. So pd splunk win, and this is the command which you need to execute. So here again, you need to pass the correct master URI. Splunk edit cluster config, and then mode you need to decide because this instance is going to act as a search head. So mode search head, and then the manager URI, and then the secret key. So you need to log in. This is done. Restart. Okay, there is a typo. Okay, so now once this node comes up, you will be able to see that this node has also joined the indexer clustering, but as a search head. So now this instance will act as a search head where you can start writing your SPLs and then creating the saved searches and also now go to the web UI and refresh it. So you'll see that. So now you can see it, this instance is acting as a search head for the clustering, right? And the important thing to show you, if you go to distributed search now, right, you will be able to see both your peer nodes as the search field for this. So you do not explicitly need to add your peer nodes as your search peer here. It will automatically add them. So now if you search here, let's check for the internal index first. So you will see the data from three hosts. One, its own internal logs, and two, the peer nodes in the clustering. So that is the reason you are seeing the internal logs from three different hosts. Let's try to search test index. You're seeing three events, and the reason why you are seeing three events, by default, if the host where the primary buckets exists and if that instance is up, the data will be retrieved from the primary buckets only. So to make it more clear, we haven't generated any event as of now on this node, right? Whatever data you are seeing as of now, right, it's coming from this 237 node, which is this one. And this is our second peer node. From here, you are not seeing any data being populated here. Because here you have the secondary buckets, not the primary buckets. Everything was generated here. The data ingested here on this peer node 1, and then it got replicated to your second peer node. But now what we will do, we'll try to create some sample event here. So this is the sample event I'm creating here. And now this event I'm generating, ingesting directly on peer node 2. Fine. So now this time the primary bucket will exist on this peer node, right? So you have this event here. You will see that event here as well. Just allow it a couple of seconds. It will automatically replicate. So now this time the primary bucket will exist on this node, and then it will create the secondary copy on this node. So just allow it couple of more seconds, and then you should be able to see four events in total here. Okay, so now here you go. You see that event got replicated to your other peer node. Now if you query this index in your search head, you will see four events, right? But the important thing to notice is these three events you are seeing from your peer node 1, while the last event you can see it's being retrieved from your peer node 2, because that's the node where this data's primary bucket exists and the secondary bucket got replicated to this node. So this is very important to know, like how the replication works and from where by default the data gets retrieved when you search it. Now few key takeaways from this session. I mean, obviously there are a lot many lectures you may find online, but I'm trying to explain it in detail and to let you know the even small things about the clustering. So two, three main things you need to make sure that you have all the network related ports open before you start implementing clustering. You have the clear cut requirement on defining replication factor, search factor, and then you need to make sure that you have uh, uh, in your server.conf, in your indexes.conf, you have defined ref factor equals to R2. because by default it's 0, right? So your data will not be replicated. The other important point to know that the data which was ingested before implementing the clustering, that will not be replicated. So those buckets will not be replicated. And this comes a lot in exams as well, like in certification exams. When we attempting admin or architect exams, you will see the questions related to it. Yeah, so I think that's it for this session. And just feel free to put a comment if you still have any doubt, or if you want me to explain something else which I might have left out explaining. So you can feel free to let me know. I'll try to put a